Okay, so we were working on writing the monster game with methods, and we had kind of sketched out our methods along with the parameters coming in and the parameters coming out. And so here's the code set up again. We have a main method, and we decided to make a few variables accessible to all the methods. These final ones that don't change, and then the scanner, we made it accessible everywhere. Okay, so the next part of this is we kind of got two choices. We could try and write the main method assuming that these methods already exist and work as they should, or we could actually write the individual methods themselves and then piece them together in main. So I don't really know which one's best, to be honest. I guess it'd be a matter of preference. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the methods first and then try to piece them together in main. So we had this display menu that just prints out the menu options like please choose an option, fight or run. Okay, so I'm going to make that method first. Okay, so I'm going to go outside of here of main and then build my little pieces. So I'm going to do public static void display menu. Okay, and I could type out those prints. Basically, we're going to need to print please choose an option and then fight or run like that. And I'm actually probably just going to copy that from my old code just to save some time here. So if you have your own monster game, I'm going to go back to where I printed out the menu right here. I'm just going to steal those lines of code. Nothing like copy and paste. That's one of the most important skills as a programmer is to be able to copy and paste correctly. Anyway, so there's our menu. Okay, and this is kind of nice. Again, this shows you the power of methods is there may be multiple points in main where we'd want to display the menu, especially as your program gets more complex. And now we have a method that does it whenever we need it. Right? Whenever we need a menu, boom, just call display menu, right? And boom, we can display the menu whenever we need it, right? And again, that, like if you were to have these lines of codes in multiple spots and then you wanted to change your menu, you'd have to go change the code in multiple spots. With a method, if we need to make changes to our menu, we want to add a spell or a potion or something, we do it in just one spot. And then wherever the code calls display menu, we don't need to update it because we just update the little piece that displays the menu. Okay, so to me, again, that highlights really the power and the purpose of methods is you can reuse them, right, whenever you need. And then if you have to make changes, you can just change the piece you need. You don't have to dig through all the code. You can just find the piece you need, like the menu, and change that. Okay, so again, this is a pretty challenging deal, but I think it's a really important thing to know how to break your code into methods and then use them correctly. Okay, so I'm not going to call it here because we're going to build main later, right? We've got display menu working. We're building the little pieces. Okay, so now we got to get the user's choice. So these two you kind of could have combined in some ways, but this one's going to return an int to main, which represents their choice that they enter, right? So we've already prompted them, and all we really got to do is scan their choice and return it, right? With nothing comes in and returns an int. So I'm going to do public static int. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Get user's choice. Takes in nothing. And since the scanner is global, right? The scanner is global. I don't need to pass it in. So I'm just going to do int choice, and then I'm going to call scan dot next int. Just gets the next int. Let's see if I called it. Oh, it doesn't like it that my scanner is not static. So I need to change this to static here. I want to use it. Okay, so now it's okay. So now I get the choice. Now it's complaining that I'm not returning an int. So now I just need to do return choice. Okay, and kind of the idea here is in main, we will know their choice because this will scan their choice and then send it back to main. That's why we have a return type here, because then we can start to do like the ifs and stuff in main, depending on what they choose. If they choose fight or run, whatever in main, we can start to base our decisions off of whatever is returned by this choice method. Get user choice. Okay, so we're still building the pieces. So get random damage, and we're going to set a max damage value on that, right? So I could copy this from right here, I guess. But I'm going to do my regular give some space here so we can see this. I'll do my public static, and this one is going to return an int representing the damage that's done. And this method is super handy where anytime we need a random damage number, right? We could almost just make this get random with a max value here to make it even more generic, but we'll call it get random damage. And this is the max amount of damage we can do. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my monster game and find this code. So basically we did 0 to 25 for the damage. So here we took the math.random times 26, which was 0 to 25.99999, and then truncated it to an int. Okay, so for us, we can use these same lines of code. I'll just change the variable names a little bit, but so I'll still do step 1. And then this, instead of being 26, we'll just make this max damage. And I got to think, do we got to add 1 to that? So if we passed in 25, we would get 0 to 24.99999. Okay, so we will need to do +1 to this. So I'm going to do max damage +1. So that'll be 0 to max damage. I don't know how to type this. Max damage dot 999999999. And then this will be 0 to max damage. Okay, and I'm just going to return it like this. So I'm just going to do return, then take step 1 and turn it into an int before we return it. So it's kind of a lot going on in one line there, but I'm just going to return an int version of step 1. Remember, math.random is a double 0 to 0.99999, so we're going to turn it into an int here before we return it. I'm going to make a little comment here. Returns a number 0 to max damage. Right, that's the point of this method. And again, we're going to call this anytime we need to do damage. We're going to pass in the max damage amount, and then it'll return 0 up to that number. Okay, just keep building the pieces. Let's go back here. So we definitely want to display their health, and that takes in the player's health and the monster's health, right? That's kind of these two lines right here. And so it's going to display whatever is passed in by the method, whatever health we pass in. All right, so again, I'm just going to make that method piece. So I'm going to do public static void display health and int player health and int monster health. And again, I'm trying to keep this super simple, right? Just do the little pieces, right? And then we can call this whenever we need it. So we're going to do your health, the player, is plus whatever the player's health is. And then do the monsters. Monster health is plus whatever is passed in that monster health variable. So we'll have to pass those in each time, and then it'll display whatever is sent into the method. All right. And then at the end, we have this message about you were killed, or next time bring a bigger sword, or you win the princess, or whatever it is. And that message is based on the player's health and the monster's health, right? If the player ran out of health, we display a message saying they lost. If the monster ran out of health, then we do a message about slaying the monster. All right, so I'm going to create that method heading again. So public static void display, I forget what I called it, display end message. And I'm going to take in these two same variables. So I'm going to just copy and paste. Again, very important skill. Copy, paste here. Bam. Okay, so I'm taking in those same two things, and I'm going to steal this code again. So at the end of the monster game, it does a check for player health and monster health, and then prints out some sort of message, whether or not they killed the monster or they died, right? So I'm just going to take that from my old code and bang it in there. So basically, if the player ran out of health, tell them bring a bigger sword next time. If the monster ran out of health, then say, okay, you slayed them, you're a good warrior. And I don't want to do just an if and an else because there is a case where they ran away. So we only want to display these messages if one of them ran out of health, right? Because the loop, remember, can end. This is kind of the hard part. The while loop can end for many reasons. It only goes if they chose fight and if both of them still have health. So if they happen to choose run, then the loop would end and we wouldn't want to print these messages out, right? Because we handled the run option in our little if else inside of the loop. Okay, so I believe we have all the pieces, right? We need, right? We have our 5 methods here, and now we just got to tie them all together in main. Okay, so this is where it's gonna get pretty tough, but I'm gonna go back to my monster game, and I know I'm gonna have these same variables as before, right? And remember, we made these other ones global, I think. Oh, we didn't do choice global, right? So I'm gonna put these ones in main, and these are the ones we're gonna kind of send in and out of the methods. We're gonna keep track of them in main. That's where they're gonna exist. Player health, monster damage, player damage. And then we're going to pass them in and out of the methods to keep track of them. And then we also had choice. Okay, so I'm just copying that back over. Okay. Oh, these probably need to be static again too, otherwise it's going to complain. So that's why I'm getting a complaint there about my fight variable. Okay, and remember, choice sets up as fight initially to force it into the while loop. Okay, so my while loop I think should be the same because I have these variables accessible in main. And so I'm just going to do my while loop the same as before. Okay, so I'm going to set up my while. So basically, while they've chosen fight and both of them still have health, right? Then we just gotta think through what do we want to do, right? And each time in our loop, we give them the menu. So let's do that first. So I'm going to display the menu. And I don't need to pass in anything and nothing is returned. So I just display it. Okay, but then I want to change choice to be right after I give them these options. I want to scan their choice, which I do in get users choice. Right, so I'm going to call get users choice. So that'll get their choice. All right, but I need to store that. Right, so this choice variable needs to update to their new choice. Right, it initially is fight, enters the while loop, right, and then I'm going to get their choice here. So it's being returned right here, and so I'm going to store it in my choice. So I'm going to do choice equals whatever is returned by that method. So in this sense, this choice variable will now get overwritten each time in the while loop. After we display the menu, we'll get their choice, and that'll store it in this choice variable. All right, so again, I'm running out of time. I know this is long and complicated, but I want to keep going because I do think, again, this is really important thing. And if you want to build a complex monster program, having it set in methods again will be super useful. All right, so I'm going to pause it here again and then make one final video. All right, thank you for watching.